Welcome back to Wade 2025 on Cwu-TV on YouTube. I'm sorry. Today, we'll focus on the changes that are required in Jackson that actually cost no money. And you just heard me talk about the educational approach, where the teachers have sole control of the classroom. In the administrative state, on the other side of that door of that classroom, will be responsible for any little knucklehead who don't want to comport himself to the rules of that classroom. And they can work their dope boy magic on their child, and if they need an alternative school, an alternative school to the alternative school, that's them. But the 24 students who want to learn are going to get their education. Now, that's going to require an attitude change. Again, no cost, no money involved. Those educators need to get up off the high horse and don't get offended and say, well, you can't tell us what to do. We wear white shirts and a suit. Well, we can appreciate all that. But you say you love the kids. You say you have the ability to make changes in these kids' lives. Well, these are some changes that you can make. And we're asking that you, if you would, respectfully, kindly, we implore you, we plead with you. Jackson Public School Board, make the changes, giving the teachers sole control over who gets to sit in the classroom. This is not an abuse of authority. This has nothing to do with big I's and little U's. This is about discipline and control. You know, so much of the discipline and control has been taken out of our classrooms and out of our public schools by these nonprofit, liberal, white-ran legal groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center, the ACLU, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. They go to federal court on behalf of some knucklehead child who doesn't want to be in school, or on behalf of this child's parents, saying that their child got suspended and they didn't suspend a white child or a Mexican child or an Asian child in proportion. See, that kind of foolishness there has just basically destroyed the structure in so many of our public schools. But now this is what we can do to get around that. If we can get that knucklehead out of the classroom and let those other 24 get their education, then rather than adding 10 or 20 juvenile delinquents to the pool at the end of every calendar year, we only add one. Because if you have, like I said, 24 students and half of them can't get their lessons in because they can't hear what the teacher's saying because this person's disrupting the class, we can do better. We can work around all these groups that are working against the interests of our community by destroying our kids. This is why I have a hard time understanding where the NAACP comes from. It's coming from when they say they're concerned about the school to prison pipelines when they go into federal court to sue to destroy the structure and the discipline in the classroom. No, House. This is what the Kim Wade show is all about. This is what Wade 2025 is all about. Folks, we're going in a different direction. We've gone as far as we can go in the direction we're headed. We've got members of the black community who have gotten their grind on down through the years. As I said earlier in today's show, we're part of the generations. I'm 66. We're part of the generations that the dollars fell on, the opportunities fell on. 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, affirmative action, set-asides, all that kind of stuff. They rained money down on us. And now we've gotten comfortable. And we're ignoring what's best for our kids because we're so busy getting our grind on, getting our hustle on, to the exclusion of them getting their education on. We're breaking all that up at the door. Oh, I don't mean maybe, I don't mean perhaps. We're breaking this up at the door. Well, who do you think you are, Kim Wade? My question to you, who do I need to be? I'm sitting up here watching you guys take advantage. Kim, who do you mean you guys? Any of those who stand in the way of these kids getting an education. You know, I got Wade 2025 up there in regards to possible political aspirations. But let me just say this here. Whatever you hear me talk about, either as a talk show host, a citizen, or a candidate, the backdrop against everything that I'm saying is going to be what's good for babies, kids, and property values. Because if you take care of those things there, everything else is going to take care of themselves. This is not rocket science. What we've had, and I've said this before on my radio program, those who have been longtime listeners, the black community went off the rails in 1968, and specifically April 4th, 1968. You know what that date was? That was the date that Dr. King got shot. And I believe, this is my personal belief, and I feel very strongly about this, Dr. King was shot as a result of the complicity of Jesse Jackson Jr., the Judas goat. He set Dr. King up to be murdered. I still believe to this day that Jesse Jackson is on paper for the FBI and the counterintelligence programs that was being ran against the black community and Dr. King back at that time. When Dr. King died, when he was shot, Jesse was airlifted up to Chicago to be on the morning talk show with Max Robinson to talk about what happened. He still had the blood on his shirt where Dr. King got shot. You know, people don't realize, or many don't, that Jesse was down on the ground on the first floor. He was at the parking lot level when Dr. King got shot, because he didn't want to be up there when the shooting got started. But nonetheless, let's skip forward here. The purpose of them installing Jesse as the head Negro in charge, and the reason why I have to put this in context to everything else I'm saying, so you'll know how we got here, where we got all these indifferent so-called leaders in our community, whether it be in the educational community, the business community, or the spiritual community. Jesse's job and role as the head Negro in charge after Dr. King got killed was to remove the spiritual underpinnings of Dr. King's movement. And so look at us today. We got all these ministers. We got all these men and women of God with no power. Dr. King, one man, he and those who are his contemporaries, the Meggers of his time, and the various other leaders throughout the various states, they had a spiritual underpinning. The devil, those white Democrats, knew they could not fade the power behind Dr. King, which was the power of God, that stiffened his spine, stiffened the spine of all those leaders, Megger and others. So they were able to withstand all that was going on. So they couldn't fade that power, so they had to kill the messenger, and that's what they did. And they put Jesse in. And Jesse's job, as I said, was to remove the spiritual underpinnings of the movement. And what Jesse has done since 1968 has moved the civil rights movement 1 degree off due north. Until now, we're pointing south. We're not able to accomplish the things that we were once accomplishing with little effort, but great sacrifice. So now is the time that somebody's got to call these things out. And so what Jesse did, he ushered in the era of the selfish black leader. Because when Megger and Martin and others, they sacrificed. In many cases, they put their own money up. They put their own, when Megger and Martin and these civil rights leaders went to jail, you know who was getting them out? People who owned juke joints, people who owned a little corner store, people who had farmers who had a good harvest. They put up land, they put up their nickels and dimes to get them folks out. You never hear A.G. Gaston being talked about during Black History Month like you hear about the political civil rights leaders. But for the A.G. Gastons of the world and the Vernon Dahmers and those people who had those little entrepreneurs, little shops, putting up their nickels and dimes and giving people places to hold their meetings, we wouldn't be here today. But they don't talk about those folks in terms of what they actually did. But that's another story. I'm going way off further than I want. But the bottom line is Jesse's role was to remove that secret sauce, that power that undergirded the movement. Now you see people running these venerable organizations, the NAACP, the Urban League. I mean, these people are just selling the imprimatur of those organizations to the highest bidder. And this is why we're not seeing the gains that we have, which is going to take us back to the attitude changes that must happen if we're going to actually pull off making America better for succeeding generations as it was bequeathed to us and as we received it. We got to make some adjustments. It is not rocket science. You and I can make these changes, but we're going to have to demand that those who be in charge, and you know, this brings us to a point here. Why is it that out of all the racial demographic groups out there, why is it that black people feel like they have to be led by somebody? I'm not a leader. But what I am is a project manager. I can say, okay, we need to move this over here. We wasted money over here. This is not bearing fruit. We're not good stewards. But everybody wants to be a leader. Everybody wants to be a drum major. Everybody wants to be out there throwing the baton up with the big hat on, high stepping, but nobody wants to get out there and be in charge. That's what's going on in the city of Jackson. Everybody's got a title, it seems, but nobody's responsible. We're breaking all that up at the door. There's things going to have to be done that people who have gotten comfortable are going to be made uncomfortable. And let me be clear, as I said during my opening, I'm a capitalist. I believe in the free enterprise system. I believe in people getting their grind on. I believe if you spend 8 hours a day doing something, you need to be getting compensated for it. I ain't got no problem with that. But what we have now is those sons of Jesse, as I call them. Those are the leaders that have arisen since Jesse Jackson ascended to head Negro in charge of Negroes in this country. And that is this selfishness, that it's all about me. They won't leave the stage of life. They won't let anybody else. We done went from the glass ceiling to a pie crust, where that brown pie crust is keeping anybody else from percolating up through the top. We're breaking all that up at the door. Again, we're going to do the things that is good for babies and what's good for property values. This is not rocket science. But what it's going to require is a ramrod steel spine undergirded by the word of God and the courage to carry out the faith that word is imparted to all of us. So we're going to do it. And they can accept it, they can get ran over by it, or they can get left behind. The old black man told me something before. He said, you got 3 choices here in Mississippi. You ain't changing nothing. If they don't want something changed, you got 3 choices: Parchment, Greyhound, or Pine Box. Well, to that old venerable old man who's long gone past, we're going to make these changes because we're going to stand and we will not be moved. And again, like I said before, this is not proprietary what's being proposed and what we're going to do. It's just going to require us standing together and putting an end to the BS. You and I, we're going to do it. Number 1, I am a rock rib conservative, unabashedly so. Many of you listen to the program know that. And when I talk about conservatism, do for self is as conservative as it comes. I'm a capitalist. I believe in the free enterprise system. I believe that people need to get paid. They call me get paid Wade. I want everybody to eat. Everybody's got to eat. Now here's the deal. I invite your participation going forward. I want you to continue to watch Cwu-Tv and listen to the Kim Wade Show at WYAB 103.9 FM, WYAB.com, Monday through Fridays from 4 to 6. Continue to listen in, add your input, and see if we can't be the example for all of America to point to and say, they're doing it right down in Jackson, Mississippi. Now there's a message in there for a believer.